It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday night. The kind of night where the city exhaled after rush hour, and the clinking of glasses blended softly with low jazz humming through hidden speakers. The restaurant, Lumiere Kitchen, sat on the corner of a busy downtown street, its tall glass windows glowing warm against the cool evening air. Inside, polished wood tables reflected amber light, and the scent of rosemary and grilled salmon drifted lazily between conversations. Dr. Alana Brooks sat alone at a two-top near the window. She wore a blue tailored suit, her natural curls pulled neatly back. A leather portfolio rested beside her chair. Her plate was nearly empty. Her wine glass held the last careful sip of Merlot. She had already paid the bill, receipt folded precisely beneath her phone. Alana liked quiet dinners after long days. They gave her time to think. Earlier that afternoon, she had closed a meeting 3 blocks away. Another successful negotiation for the development group she quietly helped oversee. She could have gone home to her condo overlooking the river, but something about Lumiere's warm light had drawn her in. Across the room, a couple laughed. A group of young professionals snapped photos of their appetizers. Everything felt normal. Until the door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. The subtle shift in the air was almost physical. Conversations dipped. Forks paused mid-bite. It wasn't unusual for police to stop by restaurants in the area. Still, the way they scanned the room, slow, deliberate, made something tighten in Alana's chest. She watched them from the corner of her eye. They didn't look at the bar. They didn't look at the hostess stand. They looked at her. The taller officer, broad-shouldered with a buzz cut, nudged his partner and nodded toward Alana's table. Without hesitation, they began walking straight toward her. Alana straightened slightly in her chair. "Good evening, officers," she said calmly as they approached. The taller one didn't return the greeting. "Ma'am, we've had complaints." "Complaints?" she asked evenly. "About what?" He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes moved over her slowly, her blazer, her hair, the portfolio by her chair. "We need you to stand up," the second officer said. Alana blinked once. "I'm sorry, but I'd like to understand what this is about." "There's been a disturbance reported," the taller officer replied, voice flat. "You're being asked to leave." "A disturbance?" She glanced around the dining room. "I've been sitting here quietly for an hour. I've paid my bill. You're welcome to confirm that with the server." The server, Mia, stood frozen near the POS system, eyes wide. She said nothing. The taller officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, stand up." The restaurant had gone silent now. Phones began lifting discreetly above tabletops. Alana placed both hands on the table, steady. "Officers, I'm not resisting, but I have done nothing wrong. If there's a specific accusation, I would like to hear it." The second officer sighed impatiently. "You were reported for making other customers uncomfortable." A flicker crossed Alana's face, more disbelief than anger. "Uncomfortable," she repeated quietly. The taller officer reached for her arm. "We're not going to argue about it." His grip was firm, unnecessary. A murmur rippled through the room. Alana did not pull away. She rose slowly from her chair on her own, refusing to be dragged up. "I can walk," she said softly. They began escorting her toward the door. Her heels clicked steadily against the hardwood floor. Every eye followed her. Some people filmed openly now. Others looked down, pretending not to see. "I paid for my meal," she said, voice clear but calm. "You can confirm that." No one responded. The manager stood near the entrance, pale and rigid, avoiding eye contact. He didn't step forward, didn't speak. Just watched. At the threshold, as cool air brushed her face, Alana stopped. "May I make a phone call?" she asked. The taller officer hesitated. "It will take less than a minute," she added. The second officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Finally, the taller one nodded. "Make it quick." Alana reached into her blazer and retrieved her phone. Her hands did not shake. She dialed one number. It rang once. "Daniel," she said when the line connected. "It's Alana. I need you to come to Lumiere Kitchen immediately. Yes, bring the vehicle, and Daniel, bring the folder." She paused, listening. "Yes, now." She ended the call. The officers guided her a few steps away from the entrance, positioning her near the curb as if to make a point. People inside pressed closer to the windows. The taller officer crossed his arms. "You understand that if there are further complaints—" "I understand," she replied calmly. Minutes passed. The streetlights flickered on, casting pale gold halos across the pavement. Traffic hummed. Then a black SUV turned the corner. It didn't rush. It didn't screech to a stop. It glided to the curb with quiet authority. The driver's door opened first. Daniel Price stepped out, tailored charcoal suit, silver hair, posture sharp as a blade. He moved quickly around the vehicle and opened the rear door. Two more individuals exited. One was an older woman in a structured coat, glasses perched on her nose, expression severe. The other was a man carrying a slim leather briefcase. The restaurant manager's face drained of color. Daniel approached Alana first. "Dr. Brooks," he said respectfully, "are you all right?" "I'm fine," she answered. Only then did Daniel turn toward the officers. "Is there a problem?" he asked evenly. The taller officer shifted. "We responded to complaints from inside the establishment." The older woman stepped forward. "Complaints regarding one of our partners." The word hung in the air. The manager hurried out of the restaurant doors, nearly tripping over himself. "Ms. Whitmore," he breathed. Alana didn't look at him. The older woman, Ms. Whitmore, adjusted her glasses. "Perhaps," she said coolly, "someone would like to explain why Dr. Alana Brooks is being removed from a property partially owned by Whitmore Capital." The taller officer blinked. Daniel opened the leather folder and handed a document to Ms. Whitmore, who passed it directly to the manager. His hands trembled as he read. Because Dr. Alana Brooks was not simply a diner. She was a founding investor in the restaurant group, a silent partner whose capital had helped open 3 of their most profitable locations, including this one. The silence on the sidewalk deepened. The manager swallowed hard. "Dr. Brooks, I wasn't aware you were coming tonight." "That's clear," Alana said softly. The officers shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am," the taller one began, tone noticeably altered, "if there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Daniel echoed sharply. Phones continued recording. Inside, patrons whispered. The manager turned to the officers. "It's fine, everything's fine. There's no issue." Alana looked at him then, steady, unreadable. Moments earlier, she had been escorted out as a disturbance. Now the entire posture of the room had changed. Spines straightened. Voices softened. Suddenly, there were apologies. The taller officer cleared his throat. "Dr. Brooks, if you'd like to return inside." She glanced back through the glass doors. At the faces watching. At the server who hadn't spoken. At the diners who had recorded but not intervened. At the manager who had allowed it to happen. "If I didn't make that call," she asked quietly, "what would have happened next?" No one answered. The question lingered heavier than any accusation. Ms. Whitmore stepped closer. "We can address this privately," she murmured. Alana nodded once. But before moving, she turned toward the officers. "For the record," she said, voice steady enough to carry across the sidewalk, "I had already paid. I was finishing my drink." The taller officer lowered his gaze. The black SUV's engine purred softly behind them. Daniel held the rear door open again. Alana paused one last time. Inside the restaurant, someone slowly lowered their phone. And just as she stepped toward the vehicle, another patrol car pulled up behind the SUV. This one didn't park quietly. It arrived fast. Its lights flashed once before cutting off. A senior officer stepped out. He scanned the scene: the SUV, the board member, the manager, the two patrol officers standing stiffly near the curb. Then his eyes landed on Alana. Recognition flickered across his face. Not discomfort. Not apology. Something else. He walked forward slowly. "Dr. Brooks," he said carefully, "before anyone leaves, we need to discuss something." The air shifted again. Daniel frowned. Ms. Whitmore stiffened. The manager looked like he might faint. Alana held the senior officer's gaze. "What exactly," she asked, "do we need to discuss?" The senior officer glanced briefly at the two patrolmen, then back at her. "It concerns a prior report filed earlier this evening," he said, "about you." A quiet tremor ran through the small crowd. "Filed by who?" Daniel demanded. The senior officer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his cruiser and retrieved a tablet. He turned the screen toward Alana, and when she saw the name listed under complainant, her calm expression changed for the first time that night. Not to fear, but to recognition. "Interesting," she murmured, "because the name on that report wasn't random. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone who knew exactly who she was, and had been waiting." The senior officer lowered the tablet. "Dr. Brooks," he said, voice measured, "this may be bigger than a dinner misunderstanding." The black SUV idled. The restaurant glowed behind them. And the night, which had begun so ordinary, suddenly felt like the opening move in something far more deliberate. Alana closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Then let's talk," she said. But as she stepped forward, her phone buzzed in her hand. A new message. Unknown number. 3 words. "You shouldn't have come." Alana looked up slowly. Across the street, in the shadow of a parked car, someone was watching. And when their eyes met, the figure stepped back into darkness. Chapter 2. The call that changed everything. The black SUV didn't just pull up. It arrived. Smooth, quiet, intentional. The kind of vehicle that doesn't rush because it doesn't have to. Conversations along the sidewalk faded into murmurs as the rear door opened. A tall man stepped out first, dressed in a tailored gray suit that fit like it had been measured to the millimeter. Behind him, a woman in a cream blazer followed, holding a slim leather portfolio tight against her chest. The officers still had their hands on Alicia Bennett's arms. Not aggressively now, but not letting go either. The suited man approached slowly, eyes moving from the officers to Alicia, then to the restaurant entrance where the manager stood stiff and pale. "Miss Bennett," he said evenly, "are you all right?" The shift was immediate. One officer loosened his grip. The other cleared his throat. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." The man's gaze didn't move. "It concerns me greatly." He pulled a card from his jacket pocket and held it up, not close enough for anyone else to see, but close enough for the officers. Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. Because printed under his name were 3 words that made authority hesitate. Senior Legal Counsel. For Bennett Hospitality Group. The company that owned not just this restaurant, but the entire building. Alicia gently removed her arm from the officer's grasp. "I paid for my meal," she said again, her voice steady. "I asked what I'd done wrong. No one answered." The restaurant manager hurried forward now, sweat gathering at his temples. "There must be some misunderstanding," he said quickly. "We received complaints. Other guests were uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable with what?" Alicia asked, turning toward him fully for the first time. He hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any explanation could. The crowd outside had grown, phones were raised higher, a car slowed in traffic. The female legal representative opened her portfolio and handed Alicia a document. Alicia scanned it briefly, then looked at the officers. "Am I being detained?" she asked calmly. The older officer stiffened. "No, ma'am." "Then I'd like to step back inside." The manager swallowed. "Of course," he said quickly, "of course." But Alicia didn't move. Not yet. Because something inside her had shifted too. It wasn't just about being dragged out of a restaurant. It was about being removed without reason. About the presumption. About the ease with which hands had grabbed her arm. The ease with which her dignity had been considered optional. The younger officer tried to regain footing. "Ma'am, we were responding to a call. We were told there was a disturbance." "I was finishing my drink," Alicia replied. "Alone." The officer said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. The legal counsel stepped slightly closer. "Officers," he said evenly, "we will be requesting the body camera footage and the 911 call transcript." That landed. The older officer's jaw tightened. "Not necessary," he muttered. "Very necessary," the lawyer replied calmly. Inside the restaurant, patrons were whispering. Some looked embarrassed, others fascinated. The manager leaned closer to Alicia, lowering his voice. "We can handle this privately." She looked at him, really looked at him. "I was handled publicly." The words were soft, but they hit harder than shouting ever could. The legal representative beside her spoke for the first time. "Ms. Bennett owns 12% of this property group." The manager blinked. I wasn't aware." "That's the problem," Alicia said. And suddenly it wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about shares. It was about recognition. The officers stepped back fully now. "You're free to go," the older one said. Alicia nodded. But she didn't step toward the restaurant. Instead, she looked at the small crowd gathered. At the phone still recording. At the expressions ranging from sympathy to silent curiosity. "Did anyone see me cause a disturbance?" she asked gently. No one answered. Because they hadn't. The manager's voice shook. "Ms. Bennett, please, let's continue this inside." She considered it. Then nodded. Inside, the energy had completely transformed. Servers who had avoided eye contact earlier now stood straighter. The hostess who had watched silently now stared at the floor. Alicia walked back to her table. Her half-finished drink still sat there. Untouched. The ice had melted. She stared at it for a moment, then pulled out her chair and sat down slowly. The legal team remained standing nearby. The manager hovered. "Would you like anything else?" he asked. She looked up at him. "Respect," she said quietly. The room fell still again. He opened his mouth, closed it. "I assure you," he began carefully, "this will be addressed internally." Alicia nodded once. But her eyes had shifted. She wasn't thinking about internal resolutions anymore. She was thinking about the woman 2 tables away who had watched silently. About the busboy who had looked away quickly when the officers grabbed her. About how easily this could have gone differently. If she hadn't made that call. If the SUV hadn't arrived. If her name didn't carry weight. The legal counsel leaned down slightly. "We can escalate this tonight." Alicia considered. Outside, one of the officers remained near his patrol car, speaking into his radio. The other avoided eye contact entirely. "Not tonight," Alicia said finally. Both lawyers looked at her, surprised. She reached into her purse and placed a small business card on the table. Not flashy. Not dramatic, but deliberate. I want copies of every incident report filed here in the last year involving customer complaints, she said to the manager, especially those involving removal. The manager hesitated. That information is confidential. Not to ownership, she replied. Silence again. The female legal representative nodded slowly, understanding forming in her eyes. Alicia wasn't reacting. She was investigating. Because this wasn't about one dinner. It was about pattern. The manager cleared his throat. Of course, we'll compile them. Alicia stood. She didn't touch her drink. Didn't take another sip. Instead, she walked toward the exit with steady steps, the legal team beside her. As she reached the door, she paused. Turned back once more. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Same lighting. Same music. Same polished tables. But it felt different now. Because something had been exposed. Outside, the SUV door opened again. Before getting in, Alicia looked toward the officers one last time. The older one avoided her gaze. The younger one held it for a split second, then looked away. The SUV door closed softly, and the vehicle pulled away. But this wasn't the end. Inside the SUV, Alicia exhaled slowly. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You don't know what you've started. Her legal counsel noticed the shift in her expression. Everything all right? He asked. She stared at the message again. No caller ID. No signature. She locked her phone. Just business, she said. But it wasn't just business. Because somewhere inside that restaurant, someone had made that call. And somewhere inside that police department, someone had authorized the response. And somewhere in the shadows between ownership and enforcement, lines had blurred. The SUV merged into traffic. Behind them, the restaurant lights glowed as if nothing had happened. But Alicia Bennett knew something had. And as her phone buzzed again, this time from a board member asking urgent questions, she realized this wasn't about dinner anymore. It was about power. And who gets questioned. And who doesn't. She looked out the window at the city skyline rising in the distance. Calm, but thinking. Because if tonight had revealed one truth, it was this. Respect shouldn't require influence. And if this had happened to her, what had happened to those without a name anyone recognized? Her phone vibrated again. Another unknown message. This one shorter. Check the footage. Alicia's breath slowed. Because she suddenly understood. There was more on those cameras than just her removal. Much more. And someone didn't want it seen. The SUV disappeared into traffic as the city lights flickered on. And Alicia unlocked her phone again, preparing to open a file that would change everything. But what she was about to see would make that dinner feel small, and make the call outside the restaurant look like the beginning, not the end. The file arrived at 2:17 a.m. No subject line. No sender name. Just a secure transfer link and a password. Lobby Cam 07. Alicia Bennett sat alone in her home office, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass windows. The house was silent except for the faint hum of her laptop. She hadn't changed out of her dinner clothes. The night still clung to her like unfinished business. Across from her sat Marcus Reed, senior legal counsel for Bennett Hospitality Group. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up. On the desk between them lay a legal pad filled with notes from earlier that evening. You don't have to open it tonight, Marcus said quietly. Yes, Alicia replied, eyes fixed on the screen. I do. She entered the password. The file opened. Multiple camera angles populated the screen, time-stamped footage from inside and outside the restaurant. "Someone inside sent this," Marcus murmured. Alicia pressed play. The footage began an hour before the officers arrived. There she was sitting alone, reviewing documents on her tablet, occasionally checking her phone. She ordered a drink, thanked the server. Calm, ordinary. Nothing disruptive. Nothing loud. Nothing unusual. The camera angle shifted to the hostess stand. Alicia leaned forward slightly. A woman approached the hostess. Mid-40s, designer handbag, irritated expression. She pointed subtly in Alicia's direction. The hostess nodded nervously and picked up the phone behind the stand. "Zoom," Alicia said. Marcus enlarged the frame. They couldn't hear audio, but body language told enough of the story. The woman gestured again toward Alicia, rolled her eyes, said something sharp. The hostess dialed. Marcus exhaled slowly. That's the call. But the footage didn't stop there. The camera switched to the manager's office. The manager stood with his phone pressed to his ear, his posture stiff, his face serious. He nodded repeatedly, then said something that made Alicia's stomach tighten. He looked straight into the security monitor, straight at her, and said, clearly enough to read his lips, "Table 12. Marcus leaned closer. "Pause it." They froze the frame. The manager's expression wasn't confused. It wasn't cautious. It was calculating. "Play it again," Alicia whispered. The clip continued. 10 minutes later, the patrol car arrived. The officers entered, and instead of approaching the hostess or manager first, they walked directly to Alicia's table. No questions. No hesitation. No attempt to observe. They had been directed. Specifically, Alicia felt something shift inside her, not anger. Clarity. "Switch cameras," she said. Marcus clicked another angle. This one showed the dining floor from above. When the officers reached her table, she remained seated, calm, measured. They spoke. She responded. One officer gestured toward the door almost immediately. There had been no investigation. No verification. Just removal. "Look at the guests around," Marcus said. Alicia's eyes scanned the room. Other patrons stared. Some whispered, but no one appeared frightened. No one appeared threatened. The woman who had complained sat back in her chair with folded arms. Satisfied. The footage continued. The moment the officers touched Alicia's arm. The shift in the room. The phones coming out. The escort toward the door. Then the exterior camera picked up the rest. The black SUV pulling in. Marcus arriving. The legal team. The manager's panic. The officers stepping back. Alicia watched herself from a distance now, poised, steady, controlled. But she noticed something she hadn't felt in the moment. Humiliation. Not loud. Not explosive. But there. A quiet stripping of dignity in front of strangers. The video ended. Silence filled the room. Marcus leaned back slowly. "It's worse than we thought." Alicia didn't answer immediately. She clicked into the metadata attached to the file. "Whoever sent this had full access," she said quietly, "not just public footage." Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. "It's Daniel, board chairman." He nodded and answered. Alicia couldn't hear the other side, but she saw Marcus's posture stiffen. "What?" he said sharply. "When?" Alicia's stomach tightened again. Marcus ended the call. "They've called an emergency board meeting," he said, "first thing in the morning." "Why?" because someone leaked a clip online. Alicia's pulse quickened. What clip? Marcus opened his tablet and turned it toward her. A 15-second video was already spreading across social media. It showed only one moment. The officers grabbing her arms. The caption read, "Black investor removed from her own restaurant." The comments were exploding. Anger, outrage, debate. The restaurant's name was trending. Alicia stared at it. I didn't release this. I know, Marcus replied. Then who did? They looked back at the laptop. The anonymous file. The unknown messages. Check the footage. You don't know what you've started. Alicia leaned back slowly. This wasn't random. Marcus nodded once. No. Morning came fast. By 9 a.m., the boardroom of Bennett Hospitality Group was full. Directors, executives, legal advisors. The air felt heavier than usual. Daniel Price, board chairman, stood at the head of the table. We have a crisis, he began. Alicia sat halfway down the table, composed. Screens behind them displayed headlines already circulating online. Restaurant accused of profiling investor. Police response under scrutiny. Daniel continued, this is damaging not just publicly, financially. Alicia folded her hands calmly. Good, she said. The room stilled. Daniel blinked, good. Yes. He frowned, explain. Alicia tapped the remote in front of her. The lobby footage appeared on the screen. The full version. From the complaint, to the manager's call, to the direct instruction, to table 12. Gasps rippled quietly across the room. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. That, Alicia said evenly, is what's damaging. She paused. Not the truth coming out. Silence. Daniel rubbed his temples. The manager claims he followed standard procedure. Standard procedure, Alicia repeated calmly, appears to include identifying a black woman dining alone as a disturbance. No one responded, because they had just watched the footage. And there was no other explanation. A senior board member cleared his throat. Perhaps we can resolve this quietly. Alicia looked at him. Quietly, she asked softly, like it happened. He said nothing. Marcus stood and handed printed copies of internal incident reports around the table. Over the last 12 months, he said, there have been 8 removals following guest complaints. 7 involved customers of color. None involved physical altercations. All cited discomfort from other guests. The room felt smaller now. Daniel looked stunned. This pattern was never escalated, he said. No, Alicia replied, it was. Another director leaned forward. What are you proposing? Alicia stood. Not dramatic. Not angry. But certain. Immediate suspension of the manager pending investigation. Mandatory bias training for all staff. Public transparency regarding the incident. And a formal review of how guest complaints are assessed before law enforcement is contacted. A murmur spread. That's going to draw more attention, someone argued. It should, Alicia said. Silence again. Because deep down, they knew she was right. Daniel exhaled slowly. And the officers, he asked. Alicia met his gaze. That's not within our authority, but the footage has already been requested by oversight. Marcus nodded. The department has opened a review. The weight in the room shifted from panic to inevitability. This wasn't going away. And perhaps it shouldn't. Daniel finally straightened, all in favor. One by one, hands rose. Not unanimous at first. But then, all of them. The motion passed. Alicia sat down slowly. Not victorious, just steady. Later that afternoon, the restaurant released a public statement acknowledging the incident and outlining corrective actions. The manager was placed on leave. The police department confirmed an internal review. And the woman who had made the original complaint, her name surfaced quietly through private channels. She had already requested a refund and declined further comment. By evening, Alicia stood once again outside the same restaurant. This time by choice. No officers, no tension, just the normal rhythm of city life. Marcus joined her. "It's done," he said. Alicia looked at the building thoughtfully. "Is it?" she asked. He considered that. "Legally, it's moving." She nodded, but her gaze lingered, because she knew something deeper had shifted. The incident wasn't just about her. It was about systems, about assumptions, about how quickly authority moves when nudged by bias. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. One final message. It wasn't just her, "Keep digging." Alicia stared at it. Marcus noticed. "More." She nodded slowly. But this time, she didn't feel threatened. She felt focused. Because Chapter 1 had been exposure. Chapter 2 had been accountability. And Chapter 3, awareness. She slipped her phone back into her purse. Turned toward Marcus. "We will," she said quietly. They walked toward the entrance. This time, the hostess greeted her warmly. This time, no one questioned her presence. But Alicia understood something now with clarity that couldn't be undone. Respect that depends on recognition isn't real respect. And change doesn't begin when you're protected by influence. It begins when you decide no one else should need it. She stepped inside. Not as a victim, not just as an owner, but as someone who refused to let silence be the easier option. And for the first time since that night, the door closed behind her without resistance.